This is why children shouldn't be allowed to sit in first class.
Harold Morrison, an elderly businessman, in Seat 1A growled in the gold-lit first-class cabin as the Boeing 777 barreled across the Atlantic sky. In Seat 2, a Richard Whittaker tech billionaire CEO of a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate was drenched in sweat, changing diapers, feeding even piping Mozart through noise-canceling headphones, and still helpless. The upper crust's disdainful look swept over him like a sentence money and power can't silence a baby's wail. A few rows back in economy, Noah Simon, 16, in a frayed dress shirt with a duct-taped backpack, was on his way to London for the International Mathematics Championship, carrying the hopes of Chicago's South Side. While Morrison sniffed in contempt, flight attendants floundered and Richard was on the verge of collapse. Noah stood up. Curious, skeptical, even wary stares converged on him as if to push him back. No one knew that the moment an unknown boy reached out to lift Emma would open the door to an unexpected ending. The one deemed out of place would deliver the greatest lesson of a billionaire's life. Richard Whittaker, tech billionaire. His face flushed with fatigue and embarrassment, slumped in first-class Seat 2A on the transatlantic flight. 6 hours earlier, he had boarded with the easy confidence of a man who owns a multi-billion-dollar company. But after only 3 hours, that confidence had evaporated. The reason Emma, his 6-month-old daughter, had been crying without pause. Richard had tried everything. He walked her up and down the aisle, patting and shushing. He changed her diaper multiple times, fed her a bottle, even pressed his noise-canceling headphones, playing classical music against her tiny ears, hoping Mozart would soothe her. Useless. First-class passengers kept turning to glare annoyed. The flight attendants offered strained smiles and ineffective tips. Even the captain gently reminded over the PA, "We ask all guests to help maintain a comfortable flight." A seemingly generic statement, but Richard knew it was aimed squarely at him. Just as he was nearing despair, something unexpected happened. A black boy of about 16 in an old but clean dress shirt stepped up from economy. A backpack hung from his shoulder, patched with strips of tape. He didn't grandstand, only dipped his head, eyes clear and kind. "May I help?" Richard was too exhausted for questions and too spent for etiquette. He simply nodded. And then a small miracle unfolded. The instant the boy's hands cradled Emma, the crying stopped. The cabin, taut as a wire for hours, fell into a hush so complete that everyone held their breath. Emma blinked up at the teenager's face, her tiny mouth curving into the hint of a smile. In his arms, she seemed to find a peace she had never known. Richard was stunned. How did you do that?" he whispered. The boy smiled gently. "My baby sister used to have severe tummy pain. It took me months to figure this out." As he spoke, he pressed certain points along Emma's back and hummed a soft, unfamiliar lullaby. The entire cabin watched, eyes wide. Irritation melted into admiration and gratitude. But what surprised Richard even more was the boy's backpack plastered with math contest logos and stuffed with notebooks of formulas and complex problems. In those eyes, Richard saw an intellect far beyond 16. "What's your name?" Richard asked, his voice unsteady with unfamiliar emotion. The teenager answered clearly, "I'm Noah Simon, 16, from the Southside of Chicago. I'm on my way to London for the International Mathematics Championship." In that moment, Richard felt his world tilt. The person who had just helped him through an airborne crisis wasn't a child care expert or another wealthy executive. He was a teenager from a poor neighborhood carrying rare grit and talent. Richard had no idea this chance encounter would spark a story that would change 2 lives, a billionaire who thought he had everything and a young prodigy fighting to prove himself. Emma thrashed, swatting the bottle with her tiny hands. Her crying sliced through the cabin. Richard ducked into the cramped lab to change her sweat-pouring collar plastered to his neck. When he emerged, Emma was still wailing. He paced the aisle, rocking her as he'd seen his wife do, but the crying only escalated, more desperate, more echoing. The attendants kept professional smiles, though their eyes tightened. "Sometimes a baby just needs to cry it out," one offered tactfully. Another brought a small speaker with ocean sounds. White noise can help. It didn't. Emma's cries rang like a distress signal beyond anyone's tolerance. First class grew heavy. In seat 1, Harold Morris, an elderly businessman, sighed theatrically, checking his watch again and again. This is why children shouldn't be allowed in first class. In 3B, Victoria, sterling fixture of high society, tapped furiously on her phone and whispered to her assistant, "Unbelievable. If you can't handle a baby, don't get on a plane." Richard heard every word, his face burning. This was his social stratum, people of power and wealth, yet today, their eyes judged him as a failure. The CEO who could negotiate billion-dollar deals and command hundreds of employees was helpless before his own child's cries. Each sob from Emma salted the wound, a reminder that some problems money and business acumen cannot solve. His worries stretched beyond the flight. In 5 days, he would need to persuade investors in London to expand into Europe. How could he walk into a boardroom with a baby who screamed for hours? A multi-billion-dollar deal could evaporate because he didn't know how to care for his daughter. Meanwhile, in economy, a 16-year-old sat motionless, listening to the whales echo for hours. His name was Noah Simon. On his shoulder, a worn backpack containing a few changes of clothes, several math books, and a plane ticket the community had scraped together through bake sales and car washes. Every small contribution counted. This trip was his only chance to compete at the International Mathematics Championship in London, a ticket that could open the door to MIT, changing the future for him and his family. Noah grew up on Chicago's Southside scarcity and stigma everywhere. His mother, Lisa, worked double shifts to keep the family afloat. His grandmother, Rosa, cared for 4 younger kids at home. 2 years earlier, when baby Maya was born, colic ravaged the household. With no money for specialists, Noah dove into research books, articles, anything, testing method after method, until he'd learned the precise way to hold, massage, and soothe. After months, he could calm Maya within minutes. "Your hands are magic," Grandma Rosa would say, brimming with pride. In his seat, Noah recognized the familiar rhythm in Emma's cries, the pattern of stomach pain and sensory overload. He knew he could help, but a weight pressed on him. A black teenager walking into first class to touch a white billionaire's baby could easily be seen as a threat, not a rescuer. 16 years of suspicion and bias had taught him to read the room. For 2 hours, he wrestled with himself. He opened his math book, tried to focus on formulas that could determine his future. But the crying carved into his memory Maya's nights, the desperate search for answers. Finally, he knew he couldn't sit still. Compassion overrode fear. He closed the book and rose under the curious eyes of economy passengers. A teenage boy headed toward first class, a world far from his own. A flight attendant blocked the divider, cautious eyes on him. "What do you need?" she asked, polite but guarded. He dipped his head respectfully. "The baby. I think I can help." Her composure faltered. "Do you have family in first class?" Noah shook his head, voice small but steady. "No, ma'am. But my baby sister had severe colic. I learned some techniques that helped her. I recognize this kind of cry." Emma's wail crested, then piercing every conversation. Before the attendant could reply, Richard appeared, ashen, shattered, his child writhing in his arms. "I heard someone say they could help," he asked, voice shaking, the billionaire calm gone. Noah drew a breath. "A hinge moment, be turned away or be trusted." "Sir, I'm Noah Simon. I'm 16, but my sister's colic was brutal. I figured out a few things that might help. I think your daughter has something similar." Richard looked into the boy's bright, unusual eyes, not just intelligence, but certainty and care. He was too spent to refuse hope. "What do I do?" he called over the crying. Gentle pressure along the spine in rhythm and a supportive hold. No vigorous rocking, no bouncing, just steady, even contact. Richard glanced around. Everyone was watching. He decided, "Please, if you think you can help, try." Noah took Emma. His hands were astonishingly sure. He set her in a position Richard had never seen, one hand supporting head and neck, the other working slow strokes along the tiny spine. Colicky babies trap gas. The stomach is under pressure. This position releases it, and a back massage stimulates digestion. Noah murmured, half explaining, half soothing. The shriek softened to hiccups, then to small sobs, and then silence. The entire cabin fell still. Noah hummed an old tune. Emma's eyes opened glossy and calm, settling on his face. Her fist unfurled. Her breathing slowed and deepened. Richard choked up. That song. Where did you learn it? Noah smiled, still rubbing in rhythm. My grandma taught me. She said her mother sang it to her. Some lullabies carry the strength of generations. The man in 1A, the same one who had grumbled, sat up, eyes bright. Remarkable, Victoria Sterling whispered. I've never seen anything like it. Crew and passengers alike stared in amazement. And Emma, after all those hours, finally slept. Noah gently handed her back, maintaining the position. Richard gazed at this extraordinary boy, full of respect. You said you're flying to London for a math competition? He whispered, afraid to wake Emma. Noah nodded, eyes alight. Yes, sir. The International Mathematics Championship. And this might be my one shot at MIT. Their talk shifted from a baby's cries to a much bigger story. Noah described the championship, how the world's top high school mathematicians gather, and how the top prizes can mean full rides to MIT, Stanford, or Cambridge. Richard raised an eyebrow. That's brutal competition. You have to be truly gifted to get here. Noah shrugged, modest, but his eyes shone. I just like solving problems, whether it's a gnarly proof or a crying baby. To me, they're both puzzles. Find the right approach, and there's a solution. Richard sat Emma asleep in his arms and motioned Noah into the adjacent seat. Tell me, how did a 16-year-old from the Southside get here? Noah hesitated, then his eyes lit. He told of self-study in the neighborhood library, online courses, and his first mentor, Miss Rodriguez, who spotted his talent. In 6 months, he finished all of high school math and moved on to college classes online. He climbed each rung: Chicago champion, then Illinois, then national, because he kept seeing patterns others missed. Richard nodded, admiration rising. This wasn't just a smart kid. This was a phenomenon. And this trip, who paid for it? Noah's gaze dimmed for a moment. The whole community. The barbershop on the corner, the church neighbors, even folks who don't have enough for themselves, everyone chipped in. Some gave a few dollars, some baked to raise funds. They believe if I get a chance, our neighborhood's future gets a little brighter. Richard clenched his jaw at the invisible weight on the boy's shoulders. This wasn't just a contestant. He was his community's hope. And if you win, Noah drew a steady breath. I'll take a full scholarship to MIT, study math and computer science, then come back to build programs for other kids. No one should have to swim alone like I did. Richard leaned back, mind alight with a new understanding. He saw not only a math prodigy, but a capacious heart one that, if given a chance, could change the world. He also saw that Noah stood at the biggest gamble of his life, a competition that could determine everything. He pondered, then leaned in. Noah, I have a proposal. I'll be in London for 5 days of mission-critical meetings. As you've seen, I'm not prepared to be both dad and CEO. I'd like to hire you to help with Emma during that time. Noah's eyes widened. Richard continued, voice crisp like a boardroom offer, $500 a day. A hotel room connected to mine. Car service to and from the competition. You'll still have study time. I'll only need you when I'm in meetings. Noah stammered, truly shocked. $500. That's what my mom earns in a week. Are you sure? Richard nodded. That's standard for professional childcare in London. But honestly, you're better than any sitter I've ever known. You proved that in hours. Noah sat frozen, mind whirring. That money could change life for his mom and 3 siblings. But he also knew he couldn't lose focus. The championship was everything. Sir, I'm grateful. But I need every ounce of energy and concentration for the competition. I can't afford to fail. Richard smiled, respect in his eyes. You're right. The competition comes first. I'll structure it so you're free to prep and you'll only help when truly necessary. Think of it as an opportunity, not just to earn, but to practice managing real pressure like in a contest. He lowered his voice. Noah, In these last 3 hours, I've seen something rare in business. Someone who solves the unsolvable, stays calm under fire, and acts not for himself, but out of compassion. Noah frowned slightly. What do you mean? Richard met his gaze. You could have stayed in economy and called my daughter's crying a nuisance. Instead, you stood up. You risked being refused, mocked, misunderstood to help a stranger. That's not just intelligence, Noah. That's character, the thing this world needs more than any math medal. That quality is rarer than mathematical genius. That sentence echoed in Noah's head. The trip to London, once centered on a scholarship competition, suddenly opened into a far more complicated journey, one that would test his faith, his pride, and the values he carried from home. Noah swallowed and asked softly, "May I have a little time to think?" Richard nodded, his voice low but firm. "Of course. But there's one more thing." His eyes turned serious. The Whitaker Technologies Foundation supports scholarships and mentorship for exceptional students from underserved communities. No matter how the competition turns out, I'd like to discuss a long-term partnership for your education. Noah's heart pounded. From a flight filled with a baby's cries, his life had swung open in ways he'd never imagined. But doubts rose too. Was this genuine help or pity wrapped in a billionaire's glow? If he accepted, would he lose the independence and pride that had carried him through the hard edges of Chicago? When the plane touched down at Heathrow, Noah glanced at Emma sleeping peacefully in her father's arms. In that instant, he knew his life had turned. Then, in a whisper, but with resolve, he said, "Mr. Whitaker, I agree. I'll help you care for Emma in the coming days." Richard closed his eyes and exhaled in relief. He knew a weight had just lifted, but more than that, he felt a rising excitement at the chance to understand the boy before him. "Excellent," Richard smiled. "The car is waiting. We'll discuss the details on the way to the hotel." As they moved through the crowded airport, their image drew curious stares. A billionaire CEO, a baby sleeping in his arms, and a teenage boy of color from Chicago's South Side. Noah, who was used to feeling invisible, suddenly became the center of attention, both exhilarating and suffocating. A sleek black Mercedes waited at the curb. The luxurious interior felt like a rolling office. Noah settled in, steadying his senses as everything dazzled at once. Richard turned to listen as Noah laid out the competition schedule, the opening the next day. 3 grueling rounds across multiple days, testing number theory, combinatorics, and problem-solving under time pressure. Richard nodded, increasingly impressed. To him, this was no ordinary teen, but a talent with vision and, above all, iron will. When they reached the Langham, one of London's grandest hotels, Noah felt as if he'd stepped into another world. Crystal chandeliers glowed overhead. Marble floors gleamed, and every piece of furniture radiated a value far beyond his family's yearly income. "Your suite is ready, and the connecting room has been prepared," the hotel manager said with deep respect. The elevator carried them to the top floor, where London spread out like a living painting. Richard's suite was larger than Noah's crowded apartment back home, complete with a private kitchen dining room and floor-to-ceiling windows. Richard pointed to a door off to the side. "Your room is here, full privacy, your own bath, and 24/7 service." Noah opened the door, and his heart skipped. A bed like a boat, a gleaming marble tub, and a window facing the legendary Hyde Park. He turned, shaking his head in disbelief. "Sir, it's hard to believe. Why are you being so generous when you know almost nothing about me?" As Richard prepared a bottle for Emma, he answered slowly, "Noah, business taught me one thing: recognize exceptional people from the very first meeting. What you did on the flight wasn't just soothing a child. It was patience, intellect, and compassion. Things even money can't buy. It's not only mathematical intelligence," he added, squeezing a drop on his wrist to test the temperature. "It's problem-solving, emotional composure, and most of all, the courage to act when everyone else stands still. Noah, you remind me of myself at 16. Noah looked up surprised. "You mean you didn't grow up wealthy?" Richard smiled as Emma latched eagerly onto the bottle. My father worked the line at a factory in Detroit. My mother cleaned offices at night. A scholarship got me into the University of Michigan for business. The company you see today, I built from nothing. The admission stunned Noah. He'd assumed billionaires like Richard were born into silk. But the truth was, different great success can begin in the humblest places. Richard continued. The only difference is that along the way, I got lucky. Mentors appeared, people who believed in me before anyone knew my name. They opened doors I couldn't have opened alone. Now, I want to be that person for you. The next morning, Noah woke in a lavish room, both excited and tense for the big day. Richard had arranged in-room breakfast along with a work schedule and Emma's care windows. I'll be in meetings from 10 to 4, Richard said as they ate. Emma usually naps from 1 to 3, use that time to study. Noah nodded, grateful for the thoughtfulness. Surprisingly, caring for Emma wasn't draining. It felt natural, as if there were a rhythm his hands remembered. The opening ceremony of the International Mathematics Championship took place at the Royal Institution of Great Britain, a cradle of discoveries that changed the world. Noah stepped into the historic hall, heart racing as he took in hundreds of math prodigies from 60 countries. Welcome to the 47th International Mathematics Championship, announced the director, Dr. Margaret Thompson. Over the next 3 days, you'll face challenges that test not only computation, but creativity, logic, and solving problems with no preset answer. Noah scanned the room. Some contestants wore sharp suits and used high-end laptops clearly from elite schools. Others were like him, simple clothes carrying the faith and sacrifice of entire communities. He remembered the airplane success doesn't spring from where you start, but from finding solutions where others stall. The first round began. Seated alone with the thick packet, Noah's eyes lit up at the opening problem, number theory, his strength. Patterns seemed to bloom naturally in his mind. 4 hours passed in a trance, higher dimensional geometry proofs, optimal network distribution, genetic probability. Each task demanded inventive synthesis. He even leaned on one of Grandma's old tricks, keep your breathing even. Don't let pressure blur your eyes. When time was called, he felt relief. But he knew the days ahead would be tougher. That afternoon, he returned to the hotel. Richard, fresh from a Tokyo investor call, looked up immediately. How'd it go? I think I did well, Noah said. But there are some incredibly strong competitors. The level is beyond anything I've faced. Richard heard the worry in his voice and smiled, remembering his own early days. Noah, let me tell you about my first investor pitch. They were veterans, and I wondered if I even belonged in the room. Then I realized they invited me because I had something they didn't. Same with you. You're here because you've already proved yourself. Emma stacked colorful blocks while Richard finished with a grin. Trust the skills that brought you here. And now, he laughed. I recall hiring a very special assistant to help with Emma this afternoon, didn't I? Richard headed into a high-stakes European meeting. For 3 hours, Noah cared for Emma. Oddly, what had seemed exhausting left him calm and energized. The wonder in her 6-month-old eyes reminded him of the thrill of discovering hidden order in chaos. Look, Emma, he said, lining up blocks. 2 red, 4 blue, 6 yellow. What comes next? She giggled, reaching for green as if her infant intuition had caught the pattern. Noah realized that teaching a baby early patterns also sharpened his own foundations for the trials ahead. Day 2 began with the team round. Noah was grouped with students from Japan, Germany, and Brazil. At first, he hung back. They'd all trained in prestigious schools while he was a library kid. But when the prompt asked for an algorithm to optimize urban traffic, his Chicago experience turned into an edge. Guys, the model has to account for real-life human behavior, weather emergencies, Noah suggested. Kenji, the Japanese teammate who had been locked into pure theory, nodded, you're right. Math must work in the real world or it's useless. As they worked, Noah became the group's center of gravity. Noah, your approach is brilliant, Maria from Brazil said. We miss these connections. By day's end, their team ranked top 3, praised by judges for innovative thinking. More importantly, Noah realized he could compete shoulder to shoulder with the world's best by being himself. That night, as Noah fed Emma and recapped the day, Richard watched quietly. At first, he'd seen Noah as a math prodigy to support. But the longer he observed, the clearer it became this wasn't just a gifted kid. This was a born leader. A bridge between cool formulas and messy human problems. After Emma drifted to sleep, Richard called Noah over. "Noah, I want to discuss something important." "Yes, Mr. Whitaker." Noah asked, a little anxious. "Whatever happens tomorrow, I'd like to invite you to work at my company someday. I'm planning a new division using AI and mathematical modeling to tackle social problems, education inequity, access to healthcare, economic development in underserved communities. I believe you're the right person." Noah went still. "Mr. Whitaker, I'm only 16. I have so much to learn." Richard smiled. "Exactly why I want to walk alongside you now. The Whitaker Foundation will fund your entire education from college through graduate school at any school you choose. In return, someday, I hope you'll come back and apply that knowledge to serve the communities that raised you." It wasn't just money. It was a covenant promising a brilliant future, entrusting Noah with great responsibility. The final day dawned with the fiercest trial. Each contestant would solve an open-ended problem and present to a panel. Not only intellect, but nerve, creativity, and the power to persuade. Noah drew a deep breath and stepped to the podium, knowing this moment would decide more than his ranking. It would shape the path ahead, where he must balance a personal dream with the hopes of a neighborhood that had bet on him. On that airplane, a 16-year-old from Chicago's South Side had done what money, power, and experts could not. The story wasn't just about soothing a child. It was proof that compassion and intellect can rise from the humblest places. Richard Whitaker, a billionaire who seemed to have everything learned that sometimes the greatest lessons arrive from those the world overlooks. What about you? In that situation, would you trust a stranger, someone who seems to have nothing, and give them a second chance? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your answer might become the spark someone needs to change. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss the next heartfelt story on this channel.